Hello and good evening to all of you. So we will continue with the answer writing part of science and technology. So last time we had seen some questions on space science and technology, and one on vaccines. So what are we going to do today is we'll see some questions related to nuclear science and technology. So we'll see in nuclear science and technology, and we'll see one or two PYQs, and based on that you will be able to understand that what more type of questions can be asked from this topic. So mainly the mains related questions that are framed on nuclear science and technology is with respect to nuclear energy. So let us just understand that what type of questions they have already asked in nuclear science and technology. So just to give you a perspective, let me open up a slide here. Now if you look at this question, if you look at this question, with growing energy needs, should India keep on expanding its nuclear energy program? Now, with growing energy needs, should India keep on expanding its nuclear energy program? So, based on this, let us just try to solve this one also, and then we'll see what more could be asked based on this. That with respect to nuclear energy, what more questions can be framed. So, let us make this as our base, and then we'll discuss the other questions. So, with growing energy needs, should India keep on expanding its nuclear energy program? So discuss the facts and discuss the fears associated with nuclear energy. Okay, so how will we structure the answer? So we'll first let us see the structure of the answer, and then we'll look at the actual answer. So in the structure, let us say we have to write an intro. Then what we have to write, that growing energy needs, should India keep on expanding its nuclear energy program? So what do you think should be the next subheading after your introduction? See, we are just taking a PYQ, but the idea is to go beyond this PYQ just to understand that what type of questions has already been asked based on nuclear science and technology, and what more could they ask based on this. Okay, so anybody, what could be or what would should be your next subheading after the introduction? Yes, would anybody like to try? So in this part, that is after introduction, what we have to do is that we have to justify this part, that with growing energy needs, should India keep on expanding its nuclear energy program? So discuss the facts and fears. So here what we have to do, that we have to justify this part, that with growing energy needs. So is there growing energy need? If there is, then how can we justify this? Then what we have to do, we have to discuss the facts of nuclear energy, and then we have to discuss the fears of nuclear energy, the facts and fears of nuclear energy. But here what we should be doing more is that we should understand that yes, this is the core part of the question, that it is asking the facts and the fears of nuclear energy. But we should in a way try, because if we conclude our answer here, the answer will conclude with fears, but we do not want that our conclusion should end with fears. So what should we be doing more is that we could be writing a conclusion, or we can write a way forward, that how we should proceed ahead. So we can add a conclusion which can overturn the fears associated with nuclear energy. So what can we write in introduction here? So with growing energy needs, should India keep on expanding its nuclear energy program? So in this part, in introduction, it is asking that what you can mention about intro. Here you can just simply give a definition of nuclear energy. What do you understand by nuclear energy? So a simple definition as when we are trying to harness energy of a nucleus of an atom, that would be referred as a nuclear energy. So how we harness this energy? So we harness it either by fission or by fusion also. But fusion technology is at a very nascent stage. We mainly harness this nuclear energy from fission reaction. So in fission we go for building up of nuclear reactors based on fission reaction. So based on that only we derive the energy. That energy would be referred as your nuclear energy. So you can begin in this way, or you can give up a argument or a data with respect to nuclear energy in India, that at present India is producing around 2% of its nuclear energy. Not 2% of nuclear energy. Out of all the electricity that India produces, 2% is contributed by nuclear energy. So you can use this data also. So you can use some data. So you can use the data of Ministry of Power. So Ministry of Power, it says that at present we are using 1.7%, that is of all the electricity that we are producing, 1.7% of electricity is produced from nuclear energy. And if you look at Department of Atomic Energy targets, so Department of Atomic Energy target, it had said that by 2020 India should be producing 20 gigawatts of energy from nuclear. At present, when you see the gigawatt wise, so this is 6.7 gigawatts. So at present we are producing 6.7 gigawatt, but the target given by Department of Atomic Energy by 2020 was 20 gigawatt. So you can see that there is a lagging with respect to nuclear targets. So you can use these data or reports also, and you can use the targets also to say that India's, what is the status of nuclear energy in India as of now, or you can simply give a definition of nuclear energy. Now let us say you have used a definition type of introduction. Then what you have to do, you have to justify this part of the question, that India's energy need is growing. So how do we justify this part? So how do we address this part, that energy need of India is growing? How do we justify this part? Yes, would anybody like to try that? How do we justify this part? That how is the energy need of India growing? See, based on these numbers only, we will frame one question after this. That we'll see. That we'll see. But how do we justify this part? That with growing energy needs, how do we justify that India's energy need is increasing? So here you can again use reports. So in this part, what you can do, you can use reports. So there is World Economic, no, World Energy Outlook report. World Energy Outlook report. So World Energy Outlook report is produced or is released by International Outlook report, and it is released by Energy International Energy Agency. International Energy Agency. So it comes out with a World Energy Outlook report. In this World Energy Outlook report, it has given many observations with respect to most of the countries globally. Also, it has given a perspective, and with respect to India also, it has given a perspective. So according to this report, so in this report, it says that India is the third largest energy consumer in the world. India is the third largest energy consumer in the world, and it is also saying that from 2020, no, that is from 2000 till 2020, that is from 2000 till 2020, the energy demand has doubled. The energy demand has doubled. So it is saying that in 20 years the energy demand of India has doubled, and it is expecting that in next 20 years the power system that India would be needing would be equivalent to that of European Union now. And it is saying that why this energy requirement is increasing, it is because that there is a rise in living standards of the people. So because of the rise in living standards of the people, there is more demand for energy. So that is why the energy demand is increasing. So it is saying that in next 20 years it will have to add in next 20 years India will have to add a power system equivalent to that of European Union as of now. Power system equivalent to European Union now. And it is also saying that yes, this is true that India's energy need will double, and we also know that India's population is increasing. So the population, because of that population, there is a pressure on energy requirement. So the agriculture would require more energy. Your industries would require more energy. So your housing sectors would require more energy. So you can use that argument also. This report is saying that yes, the energy demand has increased and it will increase further in future, but it is also saying that yet if you look at the per capita energy consumption, so according to this report is saying that the per capita energy consumption is still the lowest. Per capita energy consumption is less than half the global average, is less than half global average. So what it means that yes, as a country wise we are the third largest consumer, but if you look at the population wise, we are the largest now. We are the largest by some reports, and still if you look at per capita wise, our energy consumption is half than the global average. And if you compare it with developed countries like USA, in fact USA's with respect to USA, India's energy consumption is like 17 times less, or they are consuming 17 times more energy than us. So yes, the energy need is increasing and it will further increase because of the rising population. So now the question is, should we expand, or in order to fill this demand, should we use also nuclear energy? So if you look at this statistics, then you are seeing that as at present only 2% of the electricity, or just around 2% of the electricity, we are producing by nuclear energy. Good evening. Good evening to all of you. So those who are joining now, good evening to all of you. So my dream Lavasna, good evening. Good evening. What we are doing as of now, we are trying to just trying to solve the PYQ on nuclear science and technology. In nuclear science and technology also, they are asking questions in mains with respect to nuclear energy. So we are just trying to see what was the previous year question, and based on this only we'll see that what more questions you can expect. So still there are many areas with respect to nuclear energy which has not been asked, which can be asked in this mains. So that is what we are reaching up to, but we are just trying to solve the previous year question also, so that you are aware about nuclear energy itself, and then we'll see or tackle some of the unknown questions also. Okay. So now this question is asking that to fulfill India's energy needs, should India expand its nuclear energy? So here you have to address basically what the debate on nuclear energy. The debate on nuclear energy is that whether India should go for more nuclear energy or not. So there is always a debate that India should try to fulfill its energy requirement not using energy, nuclear energy. We should switch to more of renewable energy than switching to nuclear energy. So here we have to make a case that whether we should be switching or using more nuclear energy to produce electricity or not. So in this question, when they are asking this facts and fears, my dream Labasna, repeat me, what does I'm not able to get you, please clarify. So when we are trying to, in this question, when it is asking the facts and fears associated with nuclear energy, so we have to understand the basically the debate on nuclear energy. What are the arguments for nuclear energy? So we have discussed what is nuclear energy. So in the start, I just mentioned that when you say nuclear energy, what do you mean by nuclear energy? Nuclear energy means that when we are trying to harness the energy of a nucleus of an atom, that is referred as nuclear energy. So how do we harness it? Either by fission reaction or by fusion reaction. But for fusion, the technology is still in nascent stage, so we are mainly relying on fission type of reaction. So if you're not these answer writing sessions are meant to be like you have some basic understanding of nuclear science and technology or of space science and technology, and then we are trying to write these answers. So if you are not having those basics clear, I can delve a little like into those basics also, but that is not the scope of this answer writing. So if you're not very clear with what is nuclear energy, what is fission, when I'm saying what is fission, then you'll have to look into the basics itself. Okay. I can take one part of the basics here or at the end if you wish. So facts and fears. So here we have to write that basically the debate on nuclear energy. So the facts of nuclear energy, here what you have to write, here you have to write that how nuclear energy is better than the other types of energy sources that we have. So here let us say compare nuclear energy with coal, compare nuclear energy with let us say solar or wind. Okay, so what you have to mention here, basically you have to put out a case of bringing out the merits of nuclear energy. So when you are saying merits of nuclear energy, so here the better way to bring out the merit of the nuclear energy would be through this comparative method. So if you compare it with coal, so what do you think is the merit with respect to coal? Yes, how do you think that nuclear energy is better than coal? Yes, anybody would like to contribute that how nuclear energy is better than coal? If you compare it with coal, efficiency wise, it is said that uh, the nuclear energy is million times more efficient than your all sources of energy, whether you compare it with coal or solar or wind. It is million times more efficient. Because it is million times more efficient, so the advantage is that even by using very less fuel, we can produce more electricity. Yes, pollution is also a basis. Yes, good, Aman. So when you talk about pollution, when we are talking about pollution, basically when we are burning coal, what are we producing actually? We are producing carbon dioxide, and then we produce a lot of polluting substances, particulate matter or PM. So PM 2.5, PM 10, or then there would be issue of fly ash. So when coal will burn, it will leave ash, and in these ash you will see some heavy metals. So those heavy metals would be leaching into the environment, heavy metals. So it is polluting the air. So it is also leading to global warming. So it is leading to global warming. So climate change issues is arising because of this. It is causing pollution in air. So it is also leading to production of these waste called as fly ash, and it might have some heavy metals which might leach into soil and water bodies. So it is disturbing air also, it is polluting air also, polluting soil also, polluting water bodies also. So with respect to coal, in that sense, nuclear energy is much more environmental friendly than compared to your coal. Okay, now let us compare it with solar. Let us just compare with solar. So how, see, solar benefit is that we say that solar and wind are renewable energy. So there is no dearth of basically the raw material. That is, there is always sun, there will always be wind. So there is no dearth of raw material. So that is why they are renewables in that sense. And but there are certain limitations with respect to solar and wind, which nuclear energy does not have. So if you look at solar energy, the biggest problem with respect to solar energy, what do you think is the biggest problem with respect to solar energy? See, what we are trying to do for those who have joined now is that we are trying to find out how nuclear energy is better than most. So we are trying to just do it in comparative format. We have compared it with coal. Now we are comparing it with solar and wind. So let us just see that how it is better than solar or wind. So in solar, the problem is what, it is erratic in nature. It is erratic in nature. It means that it depends on the day, it depends on the time of the day, and it depends on the region of the earth also. So it depends on climate, it depends on weather. So it is depending on so many parameters. So it is not that every country can fully harness solar energy. So the country should be mainly in the tropical belts, what we call as the sunshine countries. And also that the climate should be quite favorable. It should not be, let us say, a very cloudy type of environment. So in night you cannot produce the solar electricity. So it is dependent on the sun. So then we are not able to produce in night. So what do we do in the night? Then we'll have to go for storage. So because of this static erratic nature, we have to also go for storage. So that itself is a very very big challenge, because these electricity, this is solar wind is a electricity which is not being produced on demand. So you, when you set up the solar vents, it will produce during the daytime, it will not produce during the night time. But if you want during the night time, it is not going to produce it. If you want during the daytime more power from the solar, then you cannot just ramp up the electricity. So it is not being produced on demand. So that is a challenge. So it is erratic also. And we will have to store the electricity. So if we want to use the electricity from solar in night, then we'll have to store. So in storage, then we have to rely on batteries. And battery technology itself has not developed to such an extent that we have very powerful batteries which can store electricity or large amount of electricity for very long periods of time. That itself becomes a lot of challenge. Yes, the other problems that rightly pointed out, solar cell problems, solar cells. So we need these photovoltaic cells. So photovoltaic cells are basically what, they are semiconductors. But is India a manufacturing hub of semiconductors? So on whom we have to rely then? So we have to rely either on China or either on Germany. So they provide us the photovoltaic cells. So we have to depend on them. So yes, we have sunshine, but for photovoltaic cells we have to depend on China or on Germany or other developed countries. This is the problem. Yes, what else do you think is the problem with solar? Now let us just see the problems of the solar, and then we'll see that how nuclear can solve all these issues, or it has a solution for all of these issues with respect to your solar and wind power. Now there is another issue of what is called as peak power demand. Peak power demand, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by peak power demand? Yes, anybody would like to throw light on this peak power demand? What is this peak power demand? Yes, Aman, try. You have given two good points, so try. So peak power demand in summers. So in summers, when at times when the sun is very hot, or during the daytime at around, let us say, 2 to 3 p.m., when it is the hottest. So when it is very hot, so there will be more requirement of energy for cooling down. So yes, someone quite correct. So maximum energy requirement, so there would be more energy requirement during the summer, and during the summer also, during a specific time period during the day, there will be more energy requirement. So if you have installed, let us say, a solar power plant, and it is of 100 megawatt, and it is running at its maximum capacity, can you just increase the power from this? See, most of the plants, they, if they are designed for 100 megawatt, they would hardly run for a fractional part. So like 20 megawatt, 30 megawatt, but you will not be, still not be able, because the efficiency is low, so you will not be able to increase the power. But if you are looking at nuclear power, you just have to increase the rate of the reaction, so you can meet peak power demand. There is no issue of battery in nuclear energy, because there is no need of storage, because you can produce electricity as and when required. So you can produce electricity on demand, and it is not erratic also, because it is not dependent on the daytime, or where you are on the earth, or whether there, what is the weather, whether it is cloudy or not. So it is not erratic in that sense. That is the benefit. The solar cell issue, that is there, because with respect to manufacturing some concerns are there. But even in nuclear energy, some concerns with respect to manufacturing is there, because we do not have an expertise. So we have to depend on foreign companies, foreign MNCs, or these nuclear giants. So yes, that dependence is there, but with respect to other things, we can tackle a lot of issues with respect to renewables. And in renewables, we say that the maintenance cost, or this is also quite high. So maintenance cost is pretty high in your solar power plants. And the biggest concern is that when you have to set up solar power plants, you have to utilize land. So the land requirement is very huge with respect to solar power plants. So in that sense, with respect to land usage wise, they are not very efficient. Yes, India might have a lot of wasteland, but still uh, getting that wasteland itself becomes an issue. So states might not release those lands, so there are concerns. And those land parcels, if they are agricultural lands, then also farmers would not be willing to divert it for energy, or to put solar power plants. So land is always a concern in India. And with respect to solar or wind, so land is becoming a challenge. So in comparison to nuclear, so nuclear would require much smaller land compared to what it can produce. So just to give you a number, just to give you a perspective, so Jatapur plant that is coming up in Maharashtra, so that single plant can produce 10 gigawatt of electricity. 10 gigawatt of electricity, this is this much of electricity is, it can meet city requirements of a city of Delhi, three times the size of Delhi. So it means one nuclear power plant has that much capacity, and this land area would be much smaller than compared to your solar. So that is the advantage. So here, when you're saying facts with respect to nuclear energy, so these are the things that you can point out, that with respect to coal. Now let us just summarize that what we have discussed in the facts here. So let me just change the color. So we are discussing the facts here. So let us just quickly summarize that what we have seen in facts. There are other facts also that we'll add. So in facts, what we are saying, that if you compare it with coal, it is highly efficient. So because it is million times more efficient, the fuel requirement, so per unit consumption will be less, or for per unit fuel that we are using, we'll be producing a lot of electricity. That is the advantage. And with respect to coal, the biggest problem is that it produces carbon dioxide, it produces other waste material which pollutes your air, which pollutes water, which pollutes soil. So we can get rid of those issues if we switch or use more nuclear energy. And you would be knowing that as of now, the maximum amount of energy or electricity that we are producing is from coal only. So if you look at Ministry of Power report, so so it categorizes the electricity into fossil fuel based and non-fossil fuel based. In fossil fuel based, you will see that it is around 58% we are producing electricity from fossil. In that 58%, 50% is coming from coal only. So we are majorly or heavily dependent on coal. And because of that coal, you are seeing these issues of greenhouse gases, pollution. So now you might be seeing the fury of nature in monsoon. So there is flooding heavily in Delhi, or landslide in many parts of India. You are seeing losses of life. So I think climate change, it is not a distant thing. These reports are there, but what we are seeing now, or we are experiencing it now also. So so time is coming so that we have to switch from coal to nuclear energy, from environment, just for environment perspective also, that we are producing more greenhouse gases, so we have to reduce. Now comparing it with solar, so we have said that solar has many limitation: diurnal limitation, seasonal limitation, regional limitation, so day wise limitation, season wise limitation, and then region wise limitation, that you cannot get solar wind, or it would not be economical to produce electricity in the poles or in those regions. So only in the tropics it is more feasible. And then we said that with respect to it is producing electricity, but it cannot be produced let us say during the night. So for that purpose we have to store electricity. Storage itself is a challenge. And one more thing that I forgot to point out, so when we are producing electricity in solar, the electricity that is being produced in your solar is basically what is a direct current. So in solar we are producing DC current. So since this is a DC current, so connecting it to the grid, so the electricity that we use is AC. So we have to convert this DC into AC current. That itself becomes a challenge. So grid friendliness is also a concern. So the type of electricity that it is producing, so grid issues are there, or frequency issues are there. So that itself is also a challenge. So if you look at other challenge, then it is not able to meet the peak power demand. So that is also a concern. So and we said that land requirement is also very heavy in this case. So what we can do, if we switch to nuclear, all these issues can be resolved. And also the advantage of nuclear is that yes, the installation cost is high, but the operational cost is very low. So running the nuclear power plants in the long run is not going to be very very costly. So in the long run it would be more efficient cost wise also. And what we are seeing, that the cost per unit of electricity for solar and wind has gone down very low. But in nuclear, yes, the cost might be high initially, but that cost over the long run could eventually decrease to a large extent. Okay, so now let us just try to understand the other part of the question, fears associated with this. Let me just take another slide. So fears of, let us see the fears of nuclear energy. So we have seen some of the merits of nuclear energy. Let us see fears of nuclear energy. or in this part what we are going to see that what are the challenges of nuclear energy, fears of nuclear energy, or basically arguments in a debate, arguments against nuclear energy, arguments against nuclear energy. So, what are the arguments against nuclear energy? What do you think is the challenge or concern with respect to nuclear energy? See, if you are able to address this debate of nuclear energy, then most of the questions on nuclear energy you will be able to solve. Okay, that is the idea. So we are making your PYQ as a base, and then we'll see the subsequent questions that can be formed based on this understanding. So, what do you understand with respect to fears of nuclear energy? So, fear of nuclear energy is with respect to the nuclear disasters that have already happened. So, nuclear disasters that has already happened. So, nuclear disasters. So, we have seen three nuclear disasters. Technology problem, yes, yes, that is also a concern. Nuclear disasters like the very recent one that had happened was your Fukushima, the big disasters that have happened, Fukushima, then you would have heard about Chernobyl, and then you would have heard about 3 Mile Island, 3 Mile Island of USA. So because of this, there has been a global negative perception towards nuclear energy because these power plants negative perception. If you specifically look at this Fukushima occurred where in Japan in 2011. Japan in 2011. So there is a fear that if natural disaster, so in 2011 what had happened, you might be remembering this also, that Japan was struck by an earthquake of Richter scale more than 9, and then subsequent to that the tsunami had come, and because of this Fukushima disaster took place. So Fukushima disaster, it is like it has created a ripple of negative perception globally. So people in India or across the globe also, they think that Japan, if Japan's is not being saved from nature's fury, and they are the ones who designed some of the most safest nuclear power plants, so even they were not able to, they were not saved because of the design or this technology. So if Japan can face this situation, so any country can face this situation. And the fear in a country like India is much more because the population density of India is very very large. So if such incident can happen, if such incident happens in very populated areas, how will you be able to evacuate so many of people? What could be the impact of such a disaster? How many people, like millions of people could die? So millions of people of the future generations might suffer because of such nuclear disasters. So this is the biggest fear among the people, that these accidents which have already taken place, they suggest that we should avoid nuclear setting up of nuclear power plants. So Chernobyl, this is considered to be one of the largest nuclear disasters that has ever occurred. You might have seen some serials and episodes also on Chernobyl. So Chernobyl, when this disaster took place, it is said that the nuclear waste, Chernobyl is in Ukraine, and it is in Ukraine is in eastern part of Europe, and it is said that when this incident or this accident occurred, the nuclear waste from this power plant reached to most part of Europe. It reached to Scandinavian countries, it reached to Eastern European countries, even to Spain, France, Portugal. It reached to most part of Europe. So because the disaster was of such great scale, so people fear that such disasters, if it occurs in a country like India, what could happen? So that fear is there. 3 Mile Island, this is in USA. So this accident took place in your 1980s. This one just not 1980s. This took in 1979. So you can say 1980s. Chernobyl took place in 1986, and this Japan incident took in 2011. So because of that, negative perception had developed. In fact, when the in 3 Mile Island accident had occurred in USA, so for 2 decades, for around more than 2 decades, there was very little interest to construct new nuclear power plants in USA. So when this Chernobyl accident occurred, so negative perception prevailed, and in 2011, so there was a complete negative perception with respect to this. So nuclear disaster is a concern. In India also, you would keep hearing about some of the leakages or the waste that are being produced. So local people are opposed to that. So the second greatest fear with respect to nuclear power nuclear power plant is the nuclear waste that these power plants they produce. So nuclear waste is a cause of concern. Nuclear waste, the problem with nuclear waste is the inherent nature itself, that these nuclear wastes are very radioactive. So they will be radioactive for more than 1,000 years. So no matter where we store, they will cause some contamination or harm or damage to the environment. So that is a cause of concern. So it will cause damage to environment, it can cause damage to animals, it can cause damage to humans. So nuclear waste disposal is a very big concern. So people, local people, they are aware of these things, they are aware of these things, and that is why they are not ready to give their land. Or in fact, if there is a proposal also to set up nuclear power plants, you will see what that local people will start protesting, because they do not want that their land should be used for setting of nuclear power plants, because they will be displaced, and they will be just placed outside these nuclear power plants. So they fear that when such disasters occur, they will be the first one who will suffer. So they will lose their livelihood from the present land also, or they might get some livelihood in the nuclear power plant, but they will lose the present livelihood, and the cost will be borne by them only. So the local people, they are protesting because they think that the cost of nuclear power plants will be borne by them, and risk will also be borne by them. So in case of nuclear disasters, they are the ones who will suffer the most. So they believe that the cost and risk will be borne by them, so they are not willing to give their land to set up nuclear power plants because of the fears. So these are your fears. See, fishermen's fishermen are also opposed to nuclear power plants. Why fishermen are opposed to nuclear power plants? It is because these power plants, these nuclear power plants, they are mostly set up in the coastal belt. Why they are set up in the coastal belt? Because they require water, they require water in huge quantity. So they will take in cold water from sea, and then this cold water is being used in as a cooling circuit. So if it is being used as a cooling circuit, it will cool something, but it itself will get hot, and then it is eventually released in sea. So the nuclear power plant, it is taking cold water, but it is releasing hot water into the sea, and that is a cause of concern, because releasing of hot water destroys the ecosystem of the sea, and the fishermen, they tend to lose out the fishes. So these colonies of fishes, they get damaged or destroyed, or they will shift to other places. So fishermen are opposed to these nuclear power plant. Yes, the thermal pollution that they are producing, that the thermal pollution that they are doing, that is a cause of concern. Yes. See, what is the other arguments given with respect to nuclear energy? That if your renewable energy, if our renewable energy, like your solar, if it is picking up, if it is becoming cheaper and cheaper, then why do we need to go for nuclear? If we can fulfill the energy requirement of the energy from solar power plant itself, then what is the need of using nuclear or going for nuclear? So if you just look at the total energy consumption of India, so it is, I'm just giving you rough numbers which is portrayed by the Ministry of Power. So annually India needs around 450 gigawatts of electricity. If you look at the potential of solar energy in India, according to National Institute of Solar Energy. So it says that around 748 gigawatt of electricity can be produced from solar energy itself. So people are arguing that if we can produce all of the energy requirement of India just by using solar, then what is the need for going for nuclear? Why take so much risk? And what we are seeing that the day by day the cost is reducing. So now the cost per unit cost has reduced to less than rupees 2 per unit. So because of that it is becoming cheaper and cheaper. So in your if you compare your nuclear energy, even the best nuclear power plant that we have in India, it will cost around rupees 4.2 per unit. So nuclear energy is not going to be cheap. So this solar energy is going to be cheap. So why use a heavier or a costlier option? So why not switch it from nuclear to solar? Okay, so another fear which people say that we have to depend on others. So it will create dependence. So dependence for fuel, for technology, because India does not have sufficient uranium. So we need uranium. We need uranium to run these nuclear power plants, and specifically we need the U-235, which is the fissile uranium. So we need this uranium to run the nuclear power plants, but we have very less of uranium in India. Of the total global reserves, we have only 2% the global uranium reserves. So our uranium reserves is less. So the point is that we'll have to depend on others for fuel also. That is a cause of concern. And the technology wise also, India does not have technical expertise in your nuclear energy. So it has to depend on foreign countries companies such as your Westinghouse, Arriva is a French company. Westinghouse is of USA. Arriva, Toshiba. So we have to depend on these companies to provide us some technology, or we depend on Russia. So we depend on Russia, or depend on USA, or on France, or on Japan. So because of that we are seeing the cause of dependence on others. That is a problem that we are seeing. So these are the arguments. One more argument is made for the sake of it. It is about that if all of the uranium of India is finished, if all the uranium of India is finished, then what will be the utility of the nuclear power plant? So we will not be able to utilize the nuclear power plant. We might have created the capacity, but now because we do not have the supply of the fuel, what is the use of the nuclear power plant? So that is also an argument made. But you should understand this, that even 2% uranium is quite sufficient in that sense, because uranium or your nuclear energy is a very very efficient method of producing energy. So we require very less input. So it is not necessary that we'll exhaust all the uranium. If we exhaust the Indian uranium, we can import from others and we can still run these nuclear power plants. So these are some of the arguments against your nuclear energy. Do you think you there could be more arguments you can add? If you think that if you have any other point, then you can add. Yes, arguments against nuclear energy. Yes, someone, any other point that you think should be added here? No points? Okay. So let us look at the. So what we have done is that we have discussed. Since this is a technical topic, so I'm taking a little more time for you to understand and grasp. Once you have understood nuclear energy, then you can address other questions quite easily. So we have seen the facts, we have seen the fears, and for growing energy needs, we have seen this report. See, you can use Niti Aayog report also with respect to growing energy need. So Niti Aayog also keeps on coming with respect to your reports with respect to India's energy need. So that you can refer that also. You can use that report also. So we have seen facts, we have seen fears, and let us see what we can write as a conclusion here. See, as a conclusion, the first thing that you should remember that you shouldn't be writing your conclusion in negative tone. You just cannot say that just because the accidents or these accidents, nuclear disasters that have occurred in the past, because they were very gruesome and a lot of people lost their life, so India should not adopt it. And because the nuclear waste also, India should not adopt it. Because the farmer protest or people are protesting that they are not ready to give up their land for setting off nuclear power plant, this argument also you should not use. What you can write in conclusion instead, that you should show your openness towards nuclear technology or nuclear energy, but you should proceed with caution. You should say that yes, we should be going for, we can go for nuclear energy, because every country has unique requirements, and it is endowed with unique resources. So India will, if India uses nuclear energy, India will have to make its nuclear power plant much safer, so that we can withstand even natural disasters also. So in that sense, you can say that we need to install more safety protocols, or more safety protocols that has been already mentioned by International Atomic Energy Agency. So we can use their SOPs for safety, and we can design nuclear power plants. You can mention some of the example also, that in the Kundankulam nuclear power plant, it is considered to be the most safest nuclear power plant, because it uses some of the techniques of like double containment. There is water sprinkler inside the core. So you can use those arguments. Okay, or you can also use Niti Aayog argument, that we can go for small modular type of reactors, small modular type of reactors, which can be installed in smaller industries, or in even in larger industries. So because they will be small in size, so they will be quite manageable. So you can use those arguments. Or basically here you have to, in the suggestion, as a suggestion, what you can do, you can overturn some of the concerns, like why people are protesting, because they fear the nuclear waste or the disasters or the perception. So you have to change the perception of the people. So you can do that also in your conclusion part. So I hope this question would be clear to you now. Now, following this question also only, what could be asked further? So I'm just taking a slide, and let us just see what more can be asked in this, or what could be the next evolution in this type of question. So next, what you can expect is a question like, oh, why, let us say this question, why nuclear energy in India is lacking, or why nuclear energy has not picked up in India. Okay, so this could be a question in some other format, like comment on nuclear energy status of India. So there could be a question like this. So comment type of question. or question could be framed in such a line that despite the 2008 Indo-US agreement, so despite the Indo-US agreement of 2008, the nuclear energy in India has not picked up. Nuclear energy in India has not picked up. Okay, analyze. A question could be something like this. It could be for 10 marker also. It could be for 15 marker. Yes. So how we can write this question? Let us see first horizontally the different structures or different parts of this answer, and then we'll look at the answer. So what can be intro here? We'll see. And then you have to why a second subheading you have to mention here, then you can mention something here, and then you can conclude also. Conclusion. Yes, what can you are you able to understand this question? See, this question has been formed basically on the idea that Department of Atomic Energy is saying that by 2020, we should have produced 20 gigawatt of electricity, and if you look at other target by 2032, India should be producing 48 gigawatt of electricity. By 2050, India should be producing 275 gigawatt of electricity from nuclear. So, but at present, the production is just 6.7 only, 6.7 gigawatt only. So, why India is lagging? Why do you think India is lagging? Are you able to understand the question? That DAE targets are these, and by 2020 only we should have produced 20 gigawatt, but at present we are producing only 6.7 gigawatt of electricity. Now the question is why we are lagging in nuclear energy. Yes, what do you think? Lack of investment. Yes. Okay. 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 So let us before delving into the reasons. Delving into the reasons, let us look at the intro. What could be in an intro here? Yes, what can we write as an introduction here? In introduction itself, you can mention that we are producing just 2% or less than 2% of electricity from nuclear sources, but the target, and this 2% amounts to 6.7 gigawatt, but the target was of 20 gigawatt. So by 2020 itself, and now it is 2023, so we have missed the target. So in that way, you are just trying to address that it has not picked up, or it is lacking, or it is lagging behind. So in that way you can use a data, or you can also go for definition of nuclear energy. So you can just simply say that nuclear energy means harnessing the energy of a nucleus of an atom, and that is very efficient. Why? Because fission and fusion reactions are much more efficient than the conventional burning of carbon based material. So traditionally we have been dependent, or even now we are dependent on what energy we are deriving mainly from burning of carbon based material. But we want that we should diversify, so that we are not dependent on just that, but we are able to produce energy from other sources. So nuclear energy has a lot of potential, so you can use any of the introduction. And the next part you have to analyze that nuclear energy has not picked up. So let us say you are just using this keyword only: nuclear energy has not picked up. Yes, so here we have to analyze the reasons. Okay, so let us say Aman is mentioning lack of investment. Yes, can you come up with more reasons that why do you think that we have not been able to meet the targets? Yes, targets are meant to be missed, but not by such a large margin. Yes, what do you think that why we have not been able to meet the target? So for this, you need to have some understanding of the nuclear regime of India. So you have to understand basically the history of nuclear energy program of India. So India, after independence, started its nuclear energy program, which was started by Dr. Homi J. Baba. So Homi J. Baba realized that India doesn't have sufficient uranium. So India has quite a lot of thorium, but thorium cannot be used directly in nuclear reactor. It has to be converted into some other form. Then only it can be used as a fuel. So he designed what is called as India's three-stage nuclear program. Are you all aware of India's three-stage nuclear program? India's three-stage nuclear program. Yes. Okay. So, and also you would have remembered that whenever you talk about nuclear science and technology, nuclear energy is a dual use technology. So we can use nuclear energy to make bombs also, and we can use nuclear energy to produce electricity also. So when India started its journey after independence, so India wanted independence in this respect, that India should be able to produce nuclear bombs also, India should be able to produce electricity also. But when India tested the Pokhran 1, okay, Pokhran 1, okay, so you're not aware about India's three-stage nuclear program. Okay, so that will require some amount of time. It usually takes me around 2-3 classes to like make you understand three-stage nuclear program, because it is a technical thing. But what we can do, we'll devote someday, where you I'll take these free live sessions. In that free live sessions, I'll take this topic of nuclear science and technology, and we'll cover this these three stage nuclear program: what is fission, what is controlled fission, what are reactors, what are pressurized heavy water reactor. So we'll cover all those topics there, so you'll be able to understand. But you should understand this part, that we can use this nuclear energy to make bombs also, and we can use it to produce electricity also. But when we made bombs, or in Pokhran 1, which happened in 1974, so after that a group was formed. After Pokhran 1, a group was formed called as the NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group was formed. This testing was done 1974. This testing was done in 1974, and NSG was formed, Nuclear Suppliers Group. This was a grouping of the developed countries, or the countries which are having access to technology and fuel. So they said that India India will not get access to nuclear fuel or technology, because India is not a member of NSG. So nuclear supply, so India faced discrimination. And before this nuclear supplier group, so there was this NPT also. So before Pokhran 1, there was NPT in 1968, 1969, non-proliferation treaty. So non-proliferation treaty was signed by basically P5 countries, and they wanted that others should also join. But India in 1968-69 denied to join NPT, and went for doing its nuclear explosion or nuclear test in Pokhran 1. So after NPT, this NSG was formed. NSG was a larger group which included not only P5 but other countries. So from NPT to NSG, and after that India kept on facing discrimination, because India was not a member of NPT or of NSG. So India faced discrimination. India was not able to get fuel or technology. So Aman, when you are saying that there was lack of investment, actually we were not able to get fuel itself, we were not able to get any technology. So other countries would not be ready to come to India to invest in nuclear science, nuclear these power plants. So that was the problem that we are facing. So this is called as nuclear apartheid. So right from 1960s till 2008, so from 1960s till 2008, India faced discrimination, and India was not able to get access to fuel and technology. So see, nuclear power plant is a very very complicated technology. India did not have a lot of technology or technological expertise in this. It needed help from others, it needed raw materials from others, but it did not get these raw materials and technology from others. So do you realize that after independence till 2008, India did not get this? So whatever number that we have achieved, it is basically just based on our efforts. And yes, Russia helped us. So because of that, we are able to reach to some numbers, but we have not been able to meet the targets, because we have historically faced discrimination with respect to nuclear fuel and technology. That was the biggest problem. Next big global reason that you can cite, so this is like a global reason that we faced discrimination. Another global reason was just before this 2008, not 2008, so in 2000, after 2008, this Indo-US agreement was signed. So you have to have an idea about the Indo-US agreement also. So Indo-US agreement is about that India and USA, they made a deal that India will, despite not being a member of NSG or NPT, it will be able to get fuel and technology. So US said that we will provide you an waiver from NSG, so you can get fuel and technology. But what happened, that India got the waiver, but India had some liability clause. So are you aware about these liability clause issues in India's nuclear program, or India's Indo-US nuclear deal? India came up with a law, India, the Slinda law. So I hope you are aware about these things. Slinda law. So, liability means that if a nuclear disaster occurs, then who will be held liable? Who will pay the amount to the people, to the society, or let us say, who will recover the damage done to environment? So, Indian laws says that the liability can be on shifted to the manufacturer or the equipment supplier. India does not have an equipment manufacturer or a supplier, so all of these are foreign companies. So these foreign companies did not like this idea that you are pinning up the responsibility on us. It should be on the operator or who runs the plants. So because of this also, these investment did not come because these companies did not want to come because of the liability clause of the Indian laws. So that was also one of the prominent reasons. So even now we are facing this issue that foreign companies, these nuclear companies are not willing to come to India. So that is a reason. And what happened after this Fukushima disaster, then these disasters also played a very negative role. So your Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, so these disasters created a negative perception. So there was a slowdown in adoption of nuclear energy itself, so that we saw in case of India also. And after this Fukushima disaster, what happened that these nuclear energy giants or MNCs, they were not able to get orders. They did not get orders to make new nuclear power plants in any countries. They got very limited orders. Because they got limited orders, they eventually faced financial distress, so they became bankrupt. So because they became bankrupt, so they are not now not in a position to invest actually. So this is like the global reason. And what are the domestic reasons? So the domestic reasons we have already seen, like local people are opposed, fishermen are opposed. Local people are opposing because they will have to give their land, they will have to bear the cost, they will have to bear the risk. So they are opposing. Fishermen are opposing. Environmentalists are opposing because of the nuclear waste that will be produced, that will be damaging. Some of the other environmentalists are saying that if we can produce electricity from solar, which is a much more or better renewable than compared to this nuclear. Nuclear is not cleaner in that sense because it produces nuclear waste. Then why go for nuclear? So these are some of the arguments that are given because that it is not picking up in India. So you can write those arguments as the reason. UPSC have see, I feel that I'm not able to do justice here because I haven't took your foundation courses. If you would have studied with me, so all these terms that I'm using, you would have understood very very clearly. So maybe I'll take the free life classes and we'll understand all these terms very very clearly, so that you're able to understand these things in a more nuanced way and in a much easier way. Okay, so with this Indo-US agreement, NPT, NSG, Pokhran 1, Pokhran 2, in what happened in between, so what we did in between. So all these things are quite interrelated, and they are important events also that you should be knowing in your preparation. Now, coming to this part, let us say you have a lot of reasons here that why it has not picked up. See, why I mentioned this three-stage nuclear program, this will take me some time to explain. So if you understand fission, if you understand breeder reactor, so do you understand breeder reactor? Because 1 year they have asked a question on advantages of a breeder reactor. So if you are not uh, understanding breeder reactor, you will not be able to appreciate that question. So maybe I'll will take a free live session to understand the breeder reactor itself, then you will be able to answer that also. So India's three-stage nuclear program, uh, we have to gradually use thorium. We know that we do not have uranium, but we have thorium. So we have to gradually shift from uranium to thorium. So in order to do that, we have to move in stages. So we have to develop breeder reactors. So that is the idea, but we have not been able to develop the breeder reactor. The idea was that we should be able to develop breeder reactor by now, but we have not been able to develop commercial scale breeder reactor. We have just got some experimental breeder reactor. So that is why our three-stage program has not been able to come up properly, and because of that also we are lagging behind. So that is also one of the important reason. That is a domestic reason, basically. Okay, so now what should you be writing here? uh, Thank you, UPSC. I'm humbled by what you're saying. Okay, so let us just try to look what should come next. What should come, what should you be writing in the next part? So let us say you are mentioning that it has not picked up, but you can also point out that yes, the nuclear energy has not been able to pick, but we have done a lot of effort, or we have taken a lot of effort to come up with your nuclear energy. So you can mention like some of the steps taken by India taken by India to ramp up nuclear energy production. So you can mention that we have developed indigenously our first stage itself. So in the three-stage nuclear program, we have developed indigenously our first stage. So pressurized heavy water reactors. Most of our nuclear reactors are pressurized heavy water reactors, and that we have developed indigenously. We have also developed experimental breeder reactors for second stage also, and for third stage also. So it is just a matter of time that we will be able to produce a commercial scale these breeder reactors, so that we'll be able to use thorium. India has 30% of the global thorium reserves, and in some time we'll be able to use that thorium also. And if we are able to use that thorium, then we will be able to meet our targets also. And the concerns with respect to the disasters that have occurred in the past is that we have learned from those disasters. We have learned from Fukushima, we have learned from Chernobyl, we have learned from Three Mile Island, and we have made design changes in the nuclear power plants that India has built after those accidents. And India's nuclear power plants are much, you can say that they are much safer because they have been designed now. So we have incorporated the design elements for safety, so our nuclear power plants are safer. So we can use that arguments to convince our people to give their land, so that we can build nuclear power plants. So all these steps you can write. Okay, that you can write here also, and that you can mention here also. In conclusion, you can say, or you can be forward looking, that in conclusion you should take a note that you shouldn't be writing that because nuclear energy is very harmful or very damaging, so we shouldn't adopt. You should always be open to any technology. It is just that how do we manage the side effects or the negative uh, effects of those negative externalities of those technologies. If we can manage the negative externalities, then we should be open for new technologies. That should be the idea that you should be conveying in the conclusion itself. So in conclusion, you can use like what is this international IE international energy international sorry I not this one, International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. So IAEA is the global watchdog. It is a UN body. So it looks after the nuclear power plants across the globe. So it comes up with some safety protocols. So you can use those safety protocols, some of the arguments there, to write your conclusion. Or you can mention some of the best practices of India itself. So the Indian nuclear plant, that is the Kundan Kulam nuclear power plant, that is in your Tamil Nadu. It is the safest nuclear power plant of India. So you can use this argument also, that we need to build more such type of nuclear power plants. If you know the arguments like how we have made it safer, you can add that also. That part you will be able to understand if we take some a class or develop some understanding why these disasters took place. So we'll take in some class we'll discuss those disasters also. So that arguments you can use. So I hope you are able to understand this question. So you can expect a question on this line. Now let me just she now let us just look at this question. We'll look at this question next time when we meet, but I just want you to prep your mind that questions are being asked based on your understanding of nuclear science and technology itself. So you have to understand that you cannot ignore this topic. Since they have asked these questions previously, you can expect more questions coming. So, give an account of the growth and development of nuclear science and technology in India. What is the advantage of the fast breeder reactor program in India? So, based on this only, we'll see what more questions can be asked. So, here they have asked advantages of fast breeder reactor, but they haven't asked disadvantages of fast breeder reactor, or they haven't asked in detail what do you understand by a breeder reactor. So, next time they could ask you that what do you understand by a breeder reactor, what is the status of breeder reactor in India, and what are the challenges of breeder reactor in India, why has India not been able to roll out the breeder reactor. So you can expect questions on this line. And when you see the first part here, give an account of the growth and development of nuclear science and technology in India. Now this topic, now nuclear science and technology. So when you see this term is now a very very broad term. It is not only energy. So here you have to talk about, yes, energy, but here you have to also talk about weapons. You have to, in energy you have to talk about fission energy. You have to talk about fusion also. In weapons you have to talk about fission type of weapon. You have to talk about fusion type of weapon. Okay, but you have to not restrict yourself here only, but you have to use, like, where nuclear science and technology are we using in other sectors, are we using in agriculture, are we using in industries, are we using in medical sciences. So when you are doing x-rays or your CT scan, are you not using nuclear science only? You are using nuclear science only. So in medical field where you are using, so you have to mention these things also. Then in nuclear science and technology also comes your understanding of what is inside the nucleus. So you have to understand, or you would be hearing about what is this Higgs boson. So your understanding of Higgs boson, neutrinos, so that also comes under your nuclear science and technology. They are, when you say nuclear science means nucleus, what is inside nucleus, you have to understand that. सो न्यूक्लियस के अंदर जो भी है वो आपको समझ आनी चाहिए. तो न्यूक्लियस के अंदर ये न्यूट्रिनोज भी है. बोसॉन्स आर फोर्स कैरियर्स, सो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड what is boson, what is Higgs boson, what is W and Z bosons, how has India contributed to this. So you have to mention those things also. So this is a broader topic, and it is mentioning give an account. So give an account means here you have to talk about electricity also, weapons also, development in your understanding of nuclear nuclear science itself, and nucleus itself. That is what you have to mention, and then you have to mention about the breeder reactor. So try to solve this question, try to search more of this, and next time when we meet we'll begin from here only. If you have any doubt you can ask, or we'll close the session. If you have any doubt you can ask, or we'll close the session. Yes, Aman. UPSC Hub. Okay, thank you, Aman. So